Hey, how you doing? Anthony Delaney here on the Launch podcast, and it's been a while since I did one of these. I had to cancel a few of them. First of all, I pulled my back really badly and had a couple of weeks where it was really bad, and then it seemed to get better, and then I did that exciting, tremendous thing of reaching down to the sock drawer, and it went again, so that tired me up. So I couldn't even sit in a chair, and I was in a lot of pain. And then just as that was getting better, then my wife had an issue, which ended up with her being 999 into hospital, and she's had to have a operation and on the road to recovery. So, we have our plans, and then life happens, things happen. So I had various things lined up that I was going to come and speak to you about on the podcast and not been able to, but that's given me opportunity to think into some other things as well. And I thought today I'd just spend a little bit of time thinking about leadership development. And how do we, I might do one on how we develop ourselves as leaders, but I thought I'd do a podcast on how we can develop other people in our organizations. Particularly, I'm going to be thinking around church because that's my world. But, you can apply this into different areas too, whichever it is that you are. Church leadership in some way, if you're leading a ministry, how do you get more people involved? I'm not even going to say to help, because sometimes that can make it seem as if we're just, the standard picture that you have of people trying to recruit people in to help is that you have a leader and you have helpers. And that's not a biblical picture. We're not there to just raise up helpers for leaders. We're about disciples who make disciples, and we're about helping people step up into their place of servant leadership and finding ways for that to happen too. We do a thing at Ivy, which we've used before, called Shape, which is where we encourage people to look at their spiritual gifts, to assess their heart, what it is they really care about, what are their abilities, what are things God's made them good at, what are they passionate about, and then finally, what experience can they bring. And we did that at the beginning of this year, and I had quite a lot of people who ended up through that signing up to ministries or starting something fresh in the church that we've not started before. And again, if you look on the Ivy Church website, and you'll be able to see ivychurch.org/shape, you'll be able to take that assessment yourself in order for you to be able to know yourself, because you can't lead other people if you don't know yourself. So I think I will do one of these on having a plan. Just recently written a blog about this, around how to have a plan for your own development and growth as a leader, but really want to look at how we can help other people to get involved in this incredible privilege of being part of the mission, part of the ministry of Jesus Christ. I know people are busy. That's the thing we often think is the reason why we don't ask people. We think, oh, they're so busy. But actually, a lot of people, they're not necessarily fulfilled just because they're busy. And just because they're working hard in the week or they've got so many other pressures on doesn't mean that actually they're particularly excited about that. But I've found that when people find their sweet spot of ministry, when they get used by God for something quite amazing, and they see other people drawn to him or drawn closer to him, whatever age or stage it is that God gives them a heart for, then that's just phenomenal. And we get the opportunity as leaders to invite people into that. So never apologize for inviting somebody to consider prayerfully that they could get involved with the ministry at your church or your ministry. Churches grow in a kind of like a three-legged stool in some ways, and the different areas that I'll often talk about on this podcast and write about on my blog, anthonydelaney.com. Are, about evangelism and reaching out to other people. Then there's discipleship and teaching people to obey everything that Jesus has commanded and then reproducing that. And then finally, leadership development is something that we have to think about, because in Ephesians 4, it talks about God gave the apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, and teachers, not so they would do the ministry, but so that they would equip the saints for the work of ministry. And how's that going? I remember reading recently a study that the Barna Group did. Yes, it was in the USA, but they said there that 71% of church leaders had no specific plan to raise up leaders in their church. I think we'd probably be worse in the UK than that. I don't think there's that many churches that actually would be able to point you to their plan and say, well, here's what we do to grow leaders. And over the years, I'd say at Ivy, we've been better at this and worse at that, depending on what's been going on in the world. Because actually, very often, this is one of those things that falls into the important but not urgent quadrant. And when we're in hard times, like many of us have been through, we're just dealing with so many urgent things and firefighting. We know it's important for us to be able to get more people involved, but sometimes it just seems easier for us to do it all ourselves again. And rather than try and train people up, raise people up, vision cast to them to be able to help them to run with it as well. So again, I don't know what your numbers would be, but do you have a plan? Do you have an idea of how you're going to develop leadership? Do you have, some people talk about a leadership pipeline. That's the world I've been in the last 10 years or so when I first connected in with New Thing and read the book Exponential by my friends Dave and John Ferguson, and talked in there about a lot of it. Chapter after chapter was actually about leadership development. They talked about having leadership pipelines. Very much that was to do with planting new churches, which is the whole raison d'etre really for New Thing, was how you want to identify people and then move them through. And I don't like the idea of the pipeline thing. The word to me, people aren't products, so I don't want to get that out of the way. But the picture of a pipeline in some way where you've got some people moving forwards, and whether they go up or down, in terms of leadership is another moot point. You could say, well, actually, the way up in the kingdom is down, and he who is greatest is the one who serves. And so it should always be, we should be downwardly mobile in our service and looking to serve more. But as you serve more, Jesus says that's how you can be great in his kingdom. And we want to be great at helping other people to be great too, and getting them to serve in different ways. Another survey said that looked at healthy churches and the ones that were growing and thriving, and they said that healthy churches usually have some form of budget set aside for leadership development, so that they're thinking about it isn't just going to happen if you haven't actually set aside some resource to enable it to happen. So between 2 and 5%. At least was what they were saying, was what a healthy church would put aside in the budget for leadership development, whether that's encouraging people to go on courses, conferences, buying resources for them, you name it, all kinds of things, but in that bracket of leadership development. So again, most churches, it would appear, therefore, don't have that as a line item. Do you? Do you have it as a line item? Over the years, I've helped many churches and organizations think into this, but I'm still learning. I think one of the best things that we did years ago was that we had a track here in the church, which was to develop people. And we even had some people who were kind of part-time in the church, leadership apprentices. You can call them, different things, different names. And we have done it just with one guy who's awesome here in recent times, where we brought somebody on and we've invested in him. But over the years, we've been good at identifying people who've got the right heart, who've got the right character, and then giving them some of the competencies of leadership through what we call leadership residencies, which is, again, one of the 4 R's of New Thing, which was when that was still a thing. It was about relationships, reproducing, resources, and residence. And residence was just what the Americans called leadership apprenticing, getting people who could eventually go and lead their own ministry, go and plant a church, etc. And we've had people go off and plant churches who've come through our leadership residency. In fact, we've had people who've come as leadership residents, then taken up leadership of the leadership residents, then gone and helped others plant churches, and then gone and plant churches themselves. So you can see that's how a great way that multiplication happens. So leadership development. At the same time, I don't want to give the wrong picture here. Sometimes leadership development fails. We think that we've got a plan for leadership development or for developing a particular person, and we end up realizing, I think we made a mistake here. We've put this person in the wrong place, in the wrong position. And I'm not saying that is a wrong person. There's no wrong people, but sometimes we can value placement over process. We can feel like, well, if I can just get somebody on my list to help with the band, or if we can just find any drummer, or we can just, we want to get some more people on the welcome team or whatever, just because we've got a clipboard and we've got X amount of spots that we need to fill. And we're maybe even, we just quickly pray and ask God to deliver that ready-made, oven-ready leader to fill a spot. Paul Scanlon used to say, though, leaders come in kit forms. they take assembly. We have to help them to be able to put them together in different ways. Sometimes, though, we can hire somebody, even and because we think that they'll be the right person, they turn out to be totally wrong person, because just having a title doesn't mean that you have the ability. Just because you give somebody a role and say, hey, everybody, this person is now doing that, doesn't mean they'll be able to do it. If anything, sometimes I look back and think, how many times have I set people up to fail in those ways because actually it just wasn't right the way that we developed them, or maybe we didn't even pre-develop them before we made them a leader. So, because sometimes the first thing that somebody's got to do, you got to realize, can they lead themselves? Is this a person who can do that? We'll look at that in a moment. Sometimes I think I'll look back and realize I've got it wrong in the past because I've been reactive rather than proactive. Again, that living in the urgent, not having a margin, means that I've ended up just finding people who weren't necessarily the right people at the right time in the right place for the right reasons, which is really what you want to get right in this leadership development process. So yes, there's all kinds of ways this can go wrong, but I want to lean in on the benefits of when we get this right. And I look back and think about so many amazing people who are serving at Ivy right now, or people who have served and then moved on, because that's the other thing. We don't want everybody just to be here. We're ascending church. We want people to, you give them the wings, and then some of them are going to fly off, but that's good because it's about the kingdom. But if you don't do it, if we don't do this, I become as the leader, the bottleneck to the mission. David Watson wrote about that years ago, before I was ordained an Anglican. I remember reading his book, I Believe in the Church, and he gave the picture there of so often in churches that the vicar, and it was a he, that was the only ones at the time that he wrote the book, can be the bottleneck for everything in the church. I'm the one that stops it rather than the one that releases it. And listen, if you're a bottleneck, you're soon going to burn out, because if everything rises or falls on you, before long you'll fall. You'll end up just messing it up. Even self-destruct, we see that happening. So can you imagine having more leaders who can do the things that God called them to do, and at the same time, you being able to lean more into what Andy Stanley talked about? I heard him years ago. It really changed my mind on leadership. Only do what only you can do. What are the things that you as a leader, that there's only really you can do them? And the more you do those things, the more you're going to be fulfilled, and the more the ministry is going to thrive. Whereas the alternative to that is that I'm just rushing around trying to keep everybody happy. And before long, I know I'm going to be failing miserably, and I'm going to be keeping the ministry and the mission small because it's limited to what I can do. The church can only do as much ministry as it has ministers. So we're here in that Ephesians 4 model to equip the saints for their work of ministry. That's the first mind shift. Lead with your head up. Lead looking around. Lead looking for who could do the things that somebody else is doing, or the things that need doing. Ask the Holy Spirit to give you that Holy Spirit radar to go up and be ready to ask people. So often I've found that people are not offended and shocked that I've asked them to consider getting involved in some way in a leadership capacity. They're thrilled and a bit scared, and they want to know why. Not what is the job, but they want to know, why did you pick me? We have, again, the new thing in Exponential talk about having an ICNU conversation. They say they're the 4 letters that are most important in this, that for somebody to go up to somebody else, and the power there is in being able to say to somebody else, I see in you somebody who could whatever. And that's because I've seen you work here with those children. And now I see in you somebody who could lead this. So we need to be ready. I remember John Ferguson teaching us that people, when we're approaching them for a leadership opportunity, they're most likely not going to ask you all the detail on what it involves, but they will ask you, why did you ask me? Why are you asking me? So we need to be ready for that, and we need to be prayed up and responsive to that opportunity. So think about some biblical models. One for me I always go back to is in Exodus, is Moses and Jethro. In fact, I have something on my bank card embossed on it with the word Jethro. And if I was coaching people, it would be, Jethro would be like the trade name of my coaching, because I just see what Jethro did there and how he was a rancher. who had multiple fields and flocks and herds and herdsmen. Among them was Moses, who was a shepherd. So he'd looked after one of his father-in-law Jethro's flocks when he met God in the burning bush. But then later on, when he had more and more people than he knew what to do with, he was still trying to lead them as a shepherd. He was trying to still be their answer man for all of their problems. And effectively, Moses came in, Jethro came in, his father-in-law, and said, I've got a plan for you, and it's up to you whether or not you take it, if you're going to listen to this or not. But I think I've got a good plan that will help you, because what you're doing right now is not good. It's not good for you. It's not good for them. And then he gave him a plan for like tiered leadership. It's not hierarchy to have tiers. It's not hierarchical. We're not talking about lording it over people. We're talking about giving people ability according to their capacity to be able to look after groups of 10s, 50s, hundreds, thousands. So he said, you need to do some thinking about this and to realize some people who are great at leading 50 would be terrible at leading 10. You need to give them 50, etc. We need to be able to think about what the groups are. There's Nehemiah. Do you remember Nehemiah? He realized that he had a vision that was far beyond his own capability, a challenge that he couldn't just build those walls and put those gates in himself. And so he stood before the people at the end of chapter 2 in Nehemiah, and he says, you see the trouble we're in? And he outlined what the problem was, and he gave them the vision of in their minds, what he'd seen, what it could be like when the walls were rebuilt. And then he said, what do you think, guys? And then they were like, let's rise up and do the work. And then he allocated them particular roles. It wasn't just doing what they could normally do in the week, if you like, because this was something different. He said, I actually don't really need any perfume makers to make perfume when we need the wall building right now. So great. On the times when you're not doing this, go and do the perfume. But now I need you to pick up the sword and the trowel and to get involved in helping to build the work. And he said it to the priests, and he said it to everybody. And he looked for people who were invested in a particular part of the wall. So the priests, he put them in charge of the area where the sheep gate, where the sheep would come through, so that then the sheep would be able to go in to be slaughtered in the temple. And they'd be part of that. So it was like, you've got a heart for that. I'm going to give you a place where you're going to do that. And it says that he lined people up next to the right people too. He thought about that. He didn't just think about the person. He thought who's working alongside them. He developed them in teams with who's on your left and who's on your right, who's working with you. So much in Nehemiah. I love that. But it was vision casting, organizing the people. And then obviously, of course, Jesus and the way that he recruited people and led people, and the way that he ultimately handed everything over to them, to us. And we know what he would do when he sent them out. He would teach them. Yes, he taught them, but he didn't just teach them. He would send them out, and then he would talk with them. He'd say, how's it gone? What did you see? What happened? And tell me, what happened. And then he would give them some correctives. He'd say, well, that's brilliant, but don't rejoice in that. Rejoice in this. And then he told stories, parables to help us understand. Of course, parable of the talents, 3 servants, only 2 of them were multipliers. The multipliers were the ones who risked it, who took their opportunity and did something with it. Whereas most of us, most church leaders, sit on what God's given us. And I mean this in terms of people. God's given you a lot of talent in your church. But if you're just looking at your own self, maybe you feel like, well, I haven't got many talents. Well, open your eyes, because there's talents all around you. God's buried them in people, and our job is to go and uncover them and help them to see it and help them to be able to use them, so that they'll hear, well done, good and faithful servant, at the end of it. So how do we do this? Well, again, the term a leadership pipeline is one that comes to mind. And in New Thing, in Exponential, they had like a progression of arrows, one thing pointing to another, where you have somebody who's a church attender, then they become maybe a house group leader. After that, they get to lead some other house group leaders, and then maybe from there they're going to go and start a house church, like that kind of thing, and then maybe they come and staff and become part of the team. And it was a little bit of the ultimate goal in all of that was that everybody, that somebody would become the senior pastor of the church or a church leader. I'm not sure that that's what our ultimate goal is for everybody, but effectively, if we are going to draw these things out, I'd say we do need to start at the top, and that's with you if you're the leader, and write your name in. If you're the senior pastor, executive pastor, whatever you want to call yourself, put your name at the top, if you like, or put it at the bottom if you want to be all humble, and then you're going to look at what's the progression that people get towards leadership in your church. You could even put your elders or whatever else it is, a PCC. You could put some of those things in at that kind of top bracket, if you like. And the higher you go in that, or I'll stick with the higher. The higher you go, the more people you're serving. Effectively, the more you're sacrificing. Really, you have to sacrifice. You have to give up to go up, if you like. You have to not just do the things that you want to do because actually you're getting paid to do them, or you've been entrusted with more things. That's just the way it works in the kingdom. So what we're looking for is a pipeline, really. We're thinking about a simple, systematic process that whereby you identify potential leaders. So you're looking out for them, the radar's on, and then you systematically approach them and invest in them, and you delegate meaningful ministry to them. That was responsibility for them to be able to carry, not just giving them tasks, giving them jobs and feeling like, well, that's it done then because I've cleared off those things off my own list. It's not just swapping my list and giving it to you. That's not what we're talking about in leadership development. And leadership development isn't necessarily discipleship because, somebody can be a disciple. You could be a growing, mature Jesus follower and not necessarily grow in any leadership responsibility. You can have people who come along to church and yeah, they come and they're part and they give and they serve and in those different ways, but they're not leading in church. I think it was a guy called Larry Osborne said that discipleship is your next step of obedience, but leadership is your next step of sacrifice. You actually have to decide that you're willing to sacrifice to be able to be a leader, to influence other people and raise them up. Some people just don't want to do it. Some people back away from the whole idea of leadership, and you're not really going to be able to help them to become a leader if they don't ever see it in themselves. You can invite them in, but then you've got to watch, well, is this the kind of person who actually wants it? And if they keep saying, no, thank you, that's an answer. Okay, let's find somebody else then. You have to give up some things in order to be able to lead some more people. So again, discipleship isn't what we're talking about here necessarily. I can disciple somebody in how they can grow in prayer and Bible study and holiness and all those kind of things. And that doesn't mean necessarily I'm recruiting them to lead. I'm helping them to become a leader in some way. Don't necessarily have to get these things mixed up. Of course, you want somebody who is prayerful. You're seeing the character in them when you might think, well, maybe this person could lead in this way. The other thing I want to say about this is it's not a quick fix. I wish that I could say that we've always been brilliant at this. Like I say, sometimes it's just been I've been so busy, we've been so busy, we've not always taken the time to be able to do this the way that we could have done. But, somebody said, what's the best time to start all of this? Well, it's a bit like that thing about when's the best time to plant a tree. Best time would have been 50 or 100 years ago. The second best time is now. So, maybe as a result of you listening to this, you could start to think about having a plan, having a pipeline, if you want to, about leadership development in your church or organization. If you feel like people are too stretched right now, if you feel like you've got leaders who are already saying that they're burnt out, if you're feeling that yourself, then I'll tell you, it's already well past time to be doing this. If you feel like you're having to do everything and so many things are overdue or getting close to it, it's time to do this now. It's time to get on with this. So you're going to have to clear some things out of your diary in order to be able to think and pray well into this for your area of ministry. And then you need to think, what's the pathway how do you clear a path for people to be able to step up into leadership and to grow so if we start now, in the future, we'll have a better future and we'll be able to expand and grow in our kingdom impact rather than just have, again, far too many people doing not enough and far too few people not just doing everything. So if you want to look into the leadership pipeline, there's a book I could recommend by a guy called Ram Charam, and he talks about this, and it's very much in a business setting and not all of it applies. And he's talking about leadership of like multinational companies at the top of it. But one thing that is pretty clear from that I get is that, how do you start to think about this? Well, start by thinking on paper, first of all. If you're a computer whiz, maybe do it on that. But for me, I get a blank piece of paper, and it's a bit like a budget in terms of what we're doing. And yeah, it's like any budget. First few times you do it, you won't get it quite right, and then you'll discuss it, and then you come back, and then you'll have another go, another iteration. But you need to design it either from the bottom down, if that's the way you want to do it, or from the top up. But if that's the way I kind of do it, I just put my name at the top, because I'm the leader of Ivy Church. And then you want to be thinking, how do I bring people from, like, people who just started to attend church, getting involved a little bit, how do I bring them from that lowest level of just being an attender to actually move up and to be a disciple who becomes a leader? And then what are the levels of leadership that we're going to entrust them? And maybe for me, I would put in like 5 different levels of leadership. I've sometimes had more, sometimes had less than that, but I would write me at the top of that. And again, around that time, I was people that I co-lead with, so they're going to be on that level too in some way. I'm going to think about the elders. I'm going to think about Catherine, who works alongside me. Is like, we now kind of call her like the executive pastor here, but we're at that kind of level. And again, this isn't a pyramid. This isn't hierarchical. It's not meant to be that. It's about how do we encourage people and grow them. So please hear that. Don't go sending me emails. I'll just delete them anyway. But instead, think about your job now. My job now is to identify people to lead at all these different levels, so that then they can go to another level that's appropriate to them, if it's appropriate for them to be able to do. You know, some people, they could lead at a particular level and they'd be really happy and brilliant. That's all you want them to do. That's fantastic. The aim is not that everybody ends up a church leader. That's what I'm trying to say there, who's paid by a church or whatever. But what we want to do is fill out these other roles. So what are the other roles? What are the things that you need to get people into in order to get the mission accomplished? Another thing I've sometimes done as I've looked at those different levels is sometimes I've been too quick to put somebody like halfway up and thought, well, they're great, so I'll put them in halfway here. And then they kind of skip some of the other levels. And the problem with that is it's like that old story of somebody saw a caterpillar trapped inside the chrysalis and they thought they'd be helpful and open it up ahead of time, but then its wings didn't fully form because it actually needed to push. The butterfly needs to push against something and to grow in order that its wings will be able to take it to be able to fly. So leadership development takes time. Is not easy, and we can try and make it go faster if we want to, but the shortcuts end up blowing up, or sometimes blowing up in our faces. I've seen that too. So that isn't how we develop, and it isn't how we develop other people either. We have to grow slow, and that's frustrating for somebody like me, because I just want to fill the gaps. Do you want just followers? Yeah, we want followers first, but do we want to grow leaders? That's what we're wanting to grow, and that takes time. So every level, you write a name or a role, and have some consistent language around what that is. So again, if this is to do with children's ministry, you'll have particular things that you're going to fill in. If it's to do with worship teams, what are the different roles that you want to be able to do? So at the lowest level of that, we're talking about the leading phase, if you like, for the first couple, is where you're just teaching tasks and you lead by example. It's like, I'm going to do this, you're going to watch me, then we're going to talk about it. And the next time you're going to do it and I'm going to watch you and we're going to talk about it. But really what I'm doing is just giving you tasks. And in order to bring even somebody onto this pathway, to get them in through that door in the first place, kind of level 1, if you want, the bottom level is you just need somebody who can lead themselves. You want to find people who you notice and are leading themselves well. This isn't about leading anybody else here. Some people go straight into leadership and they never even learn how to lead themselves very well. But you're looking for people of consistency, of character, things like they actually turn up when you've asked them to. There's a clue. They're not always coming up with excuses and reasons why they're not there, or they can't be there this time and I'm really sorry, or they turn up super late when everything else has been done. That's somebody who can't lead themselves. So you probably need to talk to them about that, or find somebody else who's then going to be able, having led themselves, to go to level 2, which is just to lead a few other people. And you're going to say to them, hey, I've noticed what you're doing around here. Can I ask you can just lead this little group of people, 3 people up to 12 people. Again, this could be that grow groups, house groups are a way to do that. But it's not the only way, obviously, because we don't just want everybody leading in house groups. We want people to be leading in teams in churches. And if we're planting churches, we're looking for people who are going to be able to be raised up to help to lead in the churches that we plant and do that well. So the first stage is just just learning to lead. And it's leading myself and it's leading a few others. The next stage after leading that, the next phase is the development phase. And that's not so much about tasks. It's about relationships. It's a lot more relationally based than me just giving you a task for you to learn. So again, this is like coaching other people, ministry coaching, somebody who's able to lead the people who are at level 1 and level 2, somebody who can help you to be able to lead other groups. So it's not just you having to do it, because otherwise, by the way, your name is on every block here. If you want to start like that and you're thinking, well, I don't even know where to start right now, just put your name in every block. And then as you grow and go forwards, you could put some other people's names in and take your name out of that block and only do what only you can do. But the developing phase, let's go back to that. This is where you learn. Some people are good at helping others grow. They're growing other people as leaders themselves. They're good at developing other people. And then the final stage at the top of this is less involved in those other two and more about building systems. That's where the people who are involved in eldership and in some of the strategies of the church, if you like, they're there to build systems for all of this to happen. So, again, often this can be staff members, paid staff members who are involved in making these systems work for other people. They're also, right at the top, if you like, my job is to build a culture, is to model it and then to try and build a culture of leadership development. And that involves me, first of all, being a leader who's growing. I need to be that person who's continually growing and improving and learning and getting closer to Jesus and learning new skills, etc. If you have to put your name in all these blocks right now, that's just the way it is. If it carries on like that, then I need to tell you this, you're the problem. And here's the solution. I'm offering it to you like Moses and Jethro with that kind of conversation. If you'll do this, it will help. But at the moment, like Jethro said to Moses, what you're doing is not good because you're the cap, either the leadership level, the development of other people level, or the strategic level. And multiplication and real growth that God wants to bring can't happen because you are clogging up the pipeline. By the way, where the pipelines get clogged, they get clogged in the bends. They get clogged in the turns. So we have to think intentionally about how do we move people at the right way, at the right time, through those difficult times when you've got somebody who's been great at helping with tasks, but now you're thinking, actually, yeah, they'd be really good. You could think maybe they'll be good at leading teams. But just because somebody can lead tasks doesn't mean that necessarily they can lead teams. Two different skill sets. I think I remember it might have been in Ramshuram's book, an example that was given of a guy who was really good at in a computer. I think it was to do with the coding. He was their number one guy for all of that. And they thought, well, let's put him in charge of all the coders. But the problem was he wasn't very good with people. He wasn't any good with teams. He was really good with code. So what they did was they lost their best guy who was good at coding, and they got somebody in charge of all the other people who ended up just feeling terrible because they were being led by somebody who didn't know how to lead them relationally. So we have to identify people and then train them and help them, if necessary, transition through those pipelines. If they've got core competencies of things for this level, then I can train them up to the next level. If not, I need to make sure they've got that core competency in order to be able to move them through the leadership levels above them. We see this so often. I mean, it happens all the time. This is one of the reasons why the world's in such a mess. We have people, the Peter Principle, who've been promoted way beyond their level of core competencies. I could look at the moment, the economy in our country right now and just think it's such a mess. And a major part of the reason is that the people that are supposed to be involved in these incredible decisions to do with billions don't even know what a billion is and what a squillion is and what a million is. And we're all suffering. I'm going to suffer as a result of that. Sorry, that makes me getting political. But I just despair because I can see the way in which that's going to affect everybody over time, because these things matter. Leadership really does matter. It all rises or falls on leadership, as John Maxwell said. So again, it's a different mindset to go from developing people to building systems. Not everybody can do that. You can have people who are great relationally at growing other people and coaching them and raising them up. But if you ask them to come up with a system for that, they're not going to be able to do it. So it isn't that everybody has to get to that level, it's that they have to get to their level. And so identify people for roles, give them a title, if you like. You don't have to tell them the title, but just so you know what it is that you're identifying. And then write down what are the skills and expectations that you would want somebody to have for this level of leadership. What are the things that are basic? What are the things that are ideal that you'd want people to be able to lead that? Skills are the things that you need to have, and I can train you in order to be able to get them. So again, at the bottom level of this, it's like, somebody who knows how to work the iPad when the kids come in and they press all the right buttons to sign them in. Expectations are that you'll have read through the materials beforehand, that you'll have done that preparation, that you'll know that you're going to be leading the prayer time, and you'll have prepared for that. So those are the difference. We need skills, we need expectations. For us, I think here at Ivy, membership is becoming more and more an expectation of being a leader at other people. Ivy, because then somebody's saying, yes, I'm in with your vision and values. We're not going to have people lead here who are not in line with our vision and our values. It's just going to come back and bite us if we do that. So look, that doesn't, at the bottom level though, you just want to get people involved in some of the simple stuff and let them grow and encourage them and watch them, observe them in that. You don't need to know all the details of the strategies of the church and you don't need to be able to tell me all the details of the safeguarding policy, but you do need to know we've got one if you're going to be able to safely look after the children in our kids' work, for instance. But yeah, there's some people further up will have some detail around what the safeguarding policy actually involves and what we do in this situation. But you don't need to know that before you can come in and help some kids as they're singing songs and doing activities. So bottom level is getting people involved. It's going up to them. It's inviting them in to ministry. Brilliant book here, Michael Fletcher, Empowering Leadership. I really encourage you to have a look at it. I've known Michael. I've not seen him for a number of years yet, but he was an incredible leadership development culture expert, and he had to be, because the church that he was leading was in an area in the US where they had Fort Bragg, where they had lots of army people coming in and coming out. They all had this turnover of people all the time. And so they talked about how they would recruit people through this means, what they called shoulder tapping. And they said that they weren't just going to stand at the front and give we really need some people who can help with children's work, or we really need some people who can help lead grow groups. But instead, the way that they did it, more than anything, 99% of the time, was that they would have those kind of I see and you conversations. And he says that they wouldn't just describe tasks to people, but they would actually give vision. Because if you want followers, talk about the tasks and ask people for help. But if you want leaders, then give vision, and you would approach people, and that you would, you'd encourage people to actually see what you see in order to invite them in to be part of seeing it happen. So when you go, a few things I'll just read out of this book. He says the connection component, as you're going up and speaking to people about inviting them into leadership, you want to talk to them and tell them what you see in them. You want to talk about your vision, why you do what you do. You want to talk about this opportunity and why you think they fit. Again, we're only going to see this happen if we've got our eyes open and our ears open, if we're looking. If we've got our heads down, stuck in the tasks all the time, we're never going to be able to do it. But then when you have this conversation, he said, if you're going to go around, and he said the people who grow their ministries and in those different ways are the ones who actually reveal prejudice towards their ministry. What does he mean by that? I mean that, yeah, everybody cares about their ministry, but the ones who end up growing teams are the ones that passionately just love it, and that becomes infectious as they invite other people with vision to step into it. It says, so these are the people, if you really get it, you can pass it on to other people. It says, these are the people who feel, if you ask them, that theirs actually just might be the most important ministry in the church, and this is how they approach people in these ways. For example, I'll read you something. It says, the outreach team, the people leading that would say to somebody else, what could be more important than us leading people to Jesus? The worship team, come and join the worship team, because people change when they get into the presence of God. The welcome team. People have to feel like they belong before they believe, and we get to be part of making that happen. Children's ministry. Do you know 80% of people come to Christ under the age of 18? Giving those kind of figures to people to help them to be able to get it. Grow groups, small groups. The Great Commission is to make disciples, and disciple making happens best in homes and in small groups rather than in big groups. People who are excited about these things end up growing their ministry. Youth ministry, when they're not just saying, oh, we need some people who are good at table tennis, but we're building the next generation of leaders. People who are passionate like that and describe it in those ways get more people coming to help, because leaders are attracted to vision. And so we've got to be better at giving the vision for getting people involved. So again, what's the process then of developing people? How do we do that? There's a couple of different ways people develop, two kinds of training, if you like, and we can use actual books and blogs and trainings that align with your church's vision and values and culture. You could send out podcasts. I'm often sending to our leaders little things that I've found that have been helpful to me. I offer it to them. I don't know how many of them necessarily always watch them, but I'm saying I'm growing. Here's something I think might help you to be able to grow. This really helped me. And then we can discuss them, or they can pass them on, and you can start to make some videos in-house that other people in the church get to watch too, of how we do this. So you don't have to keep on repeating the same thing over and over. You can say, can I send you a quick video? Sometimes, of course, you want onboarding training. When somebody comes on and they're looking to get involved in some process of leadership, there needs to be a process of onboarding. And that's fine. We want to do onboarding, but we also don't want ongoing. You don't just want onboarding training and then they're done. You want ongoing training, because that's going to be how we keep on growing. Every ministry, every church is going to be unique. Every person's unique. Every gift is unique. But most of the stuff we teach at the bottom levels is task focused, and we can break that down and show them and tell them and have policies for them, etc. But the higher you go, like I say, the more you need relational learning. And this is more like real apprenticeship. And the cost of that is time. It's encouragement. It's, I see in you and you did this and this was brilliant. And here's one thing maybe next time. Or how do you think you could maybe do it a little bit better next time? You show them a video, you spend half an hour just discussing how it went, and then let them have a go at doing it, what they've seen you do, and then report back on how it felt, how they think it went. And so even now, listen, this can be rough at first. Why not have a go between now and the next year before you move forward very much further? I know you're busy, so am I, but how do we move from busyness into effectiveness? One of the ways it's got to be through more and more leadership development. And part of that comes from having a framework. So again, encourage you to get this brilliant book, Michael Fletcher, Empowering Leadership, and learn the lessons out of that. Superb book. But also then start to think and build about your own path. We've got a discipleship pathway at Ivy. I'm thinking, what's our leadership pipeline? What's our leadership pathway going forward? And it's going to be different for different ministries in different ways. This isn't a cookie cutter. You can't just go and download one from somewhere and then take it to your church. You're going to have to think. You're going to have to pray. You're going to have to talk with other people. But once you've got yours, you can help them and say to them, hey, what's your pathway, grow group leader, for getting somebody moving from attender to apprentice to then go and start their own grow group in the future as we multiply out more and more, or whatever it is? How do you want to encourage people in your church, the people, if you've got a staff team who are working with you, how do you say to them, what's your plan for moving people from like occasional attender to somebody who's on a team, to a trusted leader and a leader of leaders? This will take time, but it is massively going to pay dividends whenever we do it. It will be worth it. Keep on checking in with these podcasts. I want to continue to try and bring great guests and try and bring and share some of the things that I'm learning as I go, as well as leader. This is also on AnthonyDelaney.com, which is .org, which is my blog. It's taking off at the moment. I'm getting thousands and thousands of of reads of my blog. I just got the report through. I'm amazed at how many people are reading my blog. So why not be one of them? Have a little look, subscribe to it if you want, so you don't miss out, and subscribe to this channel. And please do me a favor. Could you rate it on whatever platform it is that you're doing? And, hopefully you're going to give us some good stars and some good points that are going to help other people to be able to then think about whether they could be blessed by the Launch podcast. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen. God bless you, and I'll see you soon.